Hey, it's me, Raika. Today we're going to have a look at Arthur Pendragon from the Dimensional faction. Now this hero wears plate-based gear, is part of the tank class, and his primary role is to provide a significant amount of buff for your allies and protect them as well. So let's have a look at his skills. His ultimate skill, Smite. Arthur will claim Excalibur from a lake the first time this skill is used. Once he's wielding the Lake Excalibur sword, Arthur's normal attacks will greatly be strengthened. Any subsequent use of this skill will then deal 380% damage to enemies in front of Arthur. The level 2 and 3 increase this damage all the way to 480% conal damage. His next ability, Excalibur's Fury. Arthur uses his sword to form a blade aura that deals 200% damage to all enemies that pass through it. If Arthur is using Lake Excalibur's sword, he will form an additional 2 blade auras that target the enemies to his sides. Any enemies that are struck by multiple blade auras will receive 40% less damage from subsequent attacks. Level 2, 3, and 4 increase the damage that Arthur does all the way to 260%. His next ability, King's Blessing. Arthur thrusts his sword into the ground, creating a small shockwave that deals 220% damage to nearby enemies, simultaneously forming a shield around himself which is equal to 400% of his attack rating. If Arthur is wielding Lake Excalibur the sword, an additional aura that lasts for 8 seconds will be cast upon the ground, reducing the amount of damage inflicted upon all ally heroes standing within it by 35%. So this is represented by a little ring that forms around Arthur that reduces the amount of incoming damage. The level 2 and 3 increase the shield that Arthur receives to 480%, and the 13 engravings damage is increased to 240% when Arthur uses this ability. His next ability, Shield of Honor, which is a passive. Attacks that strike Arthur face on or from the front direction where he is facing deal 50% less damage to him. Attacks that strike Arthur on the face deal 60%, the level 3, and deal 70% less damage to him. Now the 16 engravings. Critical strikes that strike Arthur deal 30% less damage to him, and the amount of damage that is reduced is dealt back to the attacker. So this is a pretty significant amount of damage reduction as long as Arthur is facing the enemies. If the enemy can turn Arthur around, this will greatly disadvantage Arthur. So let's have a look at his signature item. Now this is his bread and butter, and this is what makes him extremely powerful when he's paired up with any backline damage dealer. When you unlock Battle Rally, Arthur rallies his team, raising the attack frequency of normal attacks for all allies standing behind Arthur by 50%. So what this means, this allows your allies to generate energy faster. The level 10, Arthur rallies his team and he raises their crit for all allies standing behind him by 15%. The same is true for his 20, however this is raised to 30% crit rating. And the level 30, when there are 2 or more rallied allies on the battlefield, Arthur becomes immune to control effects and recovers 5% of his max health every second. So this is critical for Arthur, as this allows him to tank a massive amount of damage and become immune to control effects. So let's have a look at his furniture. His 3 out of 3, King's Protection, after Arthur uses his ultimate skill Smite. If any of his non-summoned allies, including himself, are dealt fatal damage, this skill will be triggered, making this ally become immune to this damage and granting them a shield that lasts for 5 seconds. This shield is able to offset damage equal to 35 of Arthur's max health, and the skill can be triggered once per battle. The 9 out of 9. The shield now lasts for 10 seconds and can offset damage equal to 45% of Arthur's health. So this specific ability is similar to the Barricade artifact. So this is a pretty massive buff for him and gives him a significant amount of survivability as well. So let's have a look at how he does in battle. Now because he is a tank, you would like to place him on the front line. Now this will allow him to protect his backline ally. So there's these little shields that are protecting him and reducing damage. There we go. So as we can see, he's using a grey sword. Now, once he uses Excalibur or Lake Excalibur, as we can see here, he summons a little lake, pulls out Excalibur, and now that shield or the blade turns blue. So that as you can see over here, there's the little ring of protection, and any allies that are standing within this little ring of protection will protect Arthur and any ally within. Now this is a massive amount of damage reduction and essentially makes Arthur immune to any damage. So as we can see here, the enemies are facing Arthur head on. However, if the enemy comes into battle from behind or turns Arthur around, Arthur will not gain that damage reduction that he so desperately needs. Now, he is mainly used in PvP and in low deficit pushes of level 150 and below. However, he's extremely powerful at protecting any backline allies. Now, he's usually used in the dimensional team over here. As we can see over here, we have Arthur in the front line, and then we have two backline ranged heroes, being Merlin over here and Ainz. Now, Arthur will protect both of these heroes, increase their attack frequency, allowing them to generate energy faster, and Arthur can essentially become immune to control effects. However, Arthur takes a couple of seconds each time when he walks onto battle in order to create this aura of protection for his backline allies. So if he gets interrupted or if he gets turned around and faces the opposite direction, he will not provide the damage reduction and any other buffs for his allies. Now, the other teams that he's greatly or highly used in is any ally that requires a bit of time in order to use their ultimate skill or to get their abilities rolling. So let's say you don't have your Brutus unlocked and you're like an extremely sturdy tank for your team. You can get Arthur, and then behind Arthur you can put Damon over here. Now Damon will send his Dole to attack for him. However, Damon will permanently remain behind Arthur. So if you have another damage dealer, let's say you have Scarlet over here and you have another support. Now, as we can see over here, we have two allies that are standing behind Arthur. However, let's say Rowan dies, or for example, Rowan gets pulled out of this backline formation. That's not a problem. You can have another hero being Rosaline. Now, Rosaline will follow the hero that you select. So let's say Rosaline follows Scarlet over here. This will allow Arthur to gain his protection, his healing, and his immunity to control effects. Because essentially Rosaline is able to change her position, and this allows you to essentially stack multiple allies behind an extremely sturdy tank. So what is the minimum investment that I would recommend that you get into your offer? I would highly recommend getting his 30 out of 30 signature item. The reason why is it allows him to become immune to control effects, and it allows him to essentially heal himself. So let's say you don't have a healer or support in your team. This allows him to sustain himself for the entire duration of battle. Now, the other effects are extremely beneficial, such as 30% attack rating. And this is extremely important, especially for mage damage dealers, as this can make them have 100% a crit rating, where this will allow them to deal double damage to their enemies. Now, the other buffs that he has are also extremely effective, such as the increase to normal attacks. This allows your allies to generate more energy, and his circle of protection over here, which allows essentially himself and his allies to take less damage from his enemies. However, his furniture is not that powerful, as it has a similar effect to the relic called Barricade over here. So if you have unlocked his 3 out of 3 furniture, this will allow you to swap out this artifact over here called Barricade for another extremely tank-based relic, or you can use the relic that best suits your team for what you are currently facing. So I would recommend getting his 30 out of 30 signature item, 3 furniture, and nothing into his engravings.